The story begins in a certain town. The chosen ones receive a blessing from the gods known as a gift. Looking out the window, a young boy named Luke noticed that everyone seemed especially lively today. A man dressed in dark clothing, Luke's father, explained that today was the day Luke would receive his gift. The people were excited to see what gift Luke would receive, and whether he would become the next battle-ready lord. The royal family's power had weakened, and in the resulting power vacuum, many lords began claiming as much territory as they could. As the son of the Lord, Luke was most excited to receive a combat-related gift. A person's genetics have a strong influence on the gift they receive. Luke's mother had the gift of swordsmanship, while his father possessed the even higher-ranked holy swordsmanship. Luke's father was famous throughout the land for his strength and heroic deeds on the battlefield. Thanks to his impressive reputation, he had risen from Viscount to Marquis in a single generation. Knowing that his father was counting on him, Luke smiled, wanting to live up to his expectations. When the priest silenced the crowd, he announced Luke's gift, leaving everyone shocked. Luke had received the gift of village building. Luke was the most surprised of all and wondered what kind of gift it was. The priest could not give him a clear answer and only said that he was unsure whether the gift would be useful in combat. As the people began gossiping and worrying about their future, another young boy named Raoul asked Luke to move aside, as it was now his turn to receive a gift. The people became worried that Raoul might also receive an unknown gift like his brother. However, everyone was soon surprised and began cheering when Raoul received the gift of holy swordsmanship. Seeing how happy his father and the others were, Luke noticed the disappointed look on his mother's face. Knowing what awaited him, Luke was no longer surprised when he left without anyone coming to see him off. He understood that the only reason people had cared about him was because he was the Lord's son, and the next in line to become Lord. Luke then began his lonely journey north, heading toward the uninhabited wilderness within the House of Albert's domain. His brother had ordered him to develop the savage and barren land as a way of exiling him. Since no one had opposed Raoul's decision, Luke assumed that they all wanted him to disappear. Luke knew that his brother was better suited to become the next lord because he had always been the strongest in combat. Despite all his training, Luke had never wanted to kill anyone. The House of Albert had long been known as a family of warriors, but for some reason Luke was the odd one out. After a week of traveling, Luke finally arrived at his destination. However, he quickly realized that the land was even worse than he had expected. A vast forest surrounded the area to the north, while a huge mountain range stood to the east. Luke would have to be careful because countless dangerous creatures lived in those areas. As he wondered how he would deal with all the problems ahead of him, Luke was surprised to see Melia standing behind him. Melia tried to encourage Luke, but she was surprised to see that he wasn't very upset. She was amazed by how positive Luke remained, despite their terrible situation. When Luke saw the carriage leaving, he asked Melia if she really intended to stay with him. Melia reminded him that when she became his personal maid, she swore that she would serve him until the very end, no matter what happened. Although the two smiled at each other in appreciation, Melia had another reason for staying. She had followed Luke because she was completely infatuated with him, and Luke was exactly her type. Melia then made Luke realize that they had only two choices. The first was to do their best to turn the barren land into something useful. However, the food they had brought would only last for a month, and there was no way they could grow and harvest crops within that time. Hunting was another option, but it would be dangerous. The second option was to run away with Melia and start a new life in another city. Luke knew that Melia preferred the second option because it was the most realistic choice. However, ever since receiving the gift of village building, Luke had been unable to use it. Since he still did not know what his gift could actually do, he decided that now was the perfect time to put it to use. Suddenly, a notification window appeared in front of Luke. His surprised reaction made Melia worry that she had accidentally revealed her true feelings. As Melia moved close to Luke's face, he asked her to step back. Luke noticed that the letters displayed in the window were not from this world, yet strangely they felt familiar to him. Luke had memories of his past, although he could not remember what kind of person he had been before. Those memories were the reason he had always felt slightly different from everyone else in this world. Still unsure of what the screen was showing him, Luke decided to try building a village. Suddenly, the ground around Luke and Melia was leveled out. After seeing a list of facilities he could build, Luke wondered if they would simply appear out of nowhere whenever he selected one. Realizing that they needed somewhere to sleep, Luke decided to build a hut. A hut suddenly appeared in front of them, confirming that this was the power of his gift. When Luke asked Melia whether they should build another hut, or a well, Melia immediately suggested building a well. She secretly wanted to spend every night with Luke, but she also gave a good reason for needing a well. Luke was amazed when he built the well out of nothing. Excited to see what they could build next, Melia suggested making a field. Suddenly, a window appeared in front of Melia, informing Luke that she could be added as a villager. After explaining what he was seeing, Luke asked Melia about it. Melia smiled and asked Luke to make her his villager. Luke then noticed that he received 1 point every day for each villager. Melia happily hugged Luke, wishing that the village could remain just the two of them. As night fell, Luke remembered how hopeless he had felt after receiving the gift of village building, but now he realized that he actually preferred his gift over a combat gift. Luke disliked war because it was all about taking land and killing people. He decided to use his power to develop the barren land and build his own village. As Luke closed his eyes and imagined all the amazing things he could build in his village, he felt a little uncomfortable when Melia kept sniffing his hair. Meanwhile, a young lady named Selin told her father that she was leaving home. Seeing her father's confused expression, Celine explained that she could not take it anymore and had reached her limit. Celine understood how serious the current situation was and knew that lords often married their children off for political reasons. However, she could not accept being forced to marry Raoul. When her father insisted that Raoul was Lord Albert's successor, Celine ran away, saying that she would rather marry someone else than Raoul. When the guards tried to stop her, Celine immediately warned them that they would get hurt if they stood in her way. The guards froze in fear and could only watch as Celine walked away. Back in the barren land, Luke realized that he needed to build another hut because it was difficult for him to sleep with Melia. Luke was surprised when Melia woke up at exactly the same time as him. When Melia explained that it was her duty as a villager to wake up early for her master, Luke reminded her that she was now a villager, not a maid. However, even after Luke explained her new role, Melia remained determined to support and help him however she could. Looking at Luke, Melia remembered the day she first arrived at Lord Albert's castle. Melia was the second daughter of a low-ranking noble family. Since her family could not afford the large donations required to receive certain blessings, she had two choices. She could either marry into another low-ranking noble family or become a maid for a high-ranking noble family. Melia chose to become a maid for the Albert family, which at the time was rapidly gaining land and power. However, Melia had no experience as a maid, so she constantly struggled with her duties. One day, Melia accidentally broke Madame Isabella's most cherished dish. She was shocked when Luke stepped forward and took the blame for her. After hearing Madame Isabella's lecture, Melia immediately cleaned up the broken dish. As she watched Luke, she was surprised when he turned to her and said that his mother would not get angry if he took the blame. At that moment, the 3-year-old Luke captured 12-year-old Melia's heart. When Luke finally accumulated 20 points, he was excited because he could now build a field. Melia warned Luke that working on a field would not be easy. However, Luke did not want to be spoiled. He wanted to work with his own hands because this was his village. Seeing the smart, kind, and adorable Luke doing his best, Melia was completely overwhelmed with happiness. While Luke was working, he suddenly reminded Melia about the seed she had thrown onto the ground. That night, Luke was exhausted after building the field and planting the seeds. While taking a bath, he heard a strange sound coming from the forest. Luke decided that they needed to build defensive facilities because he could not simply hope that they would never be attacked. Day after day, Luke built a watchtower and continued working on whatever facilities he could make for his village. After a few days, Luke and Melia were both excited to see the first sprouts growing in their field. When Luke heard the same strange sound from the previous night, he wondered if it was a beast. As Melia tried to look from the watchtower, she realized that her position gave Luke an awkward view. Feeling embarrassed, she quickly moved around. When Melia finally spotted the source of the sound, she reported that a group of goblins was heading toward them. With no other choice, Luke rushed toward the goblins. When one of the goblins attacked, Luke felt confident after realizing that they were not fast enough to overwhelm him. He defeated the goblins one by one, but then suddenly froze when he saw a goblin with a knife about to attack him. Fortunately, Luke was saved by Selin, who threw an object that struck the goblin. The person who had saved Luke was Celine Brada, also known as the Iceblade Princess. Celine was the daughter of a count and possessed the gifts of dual wielding and live-in magic, allowing her to fight with 2 blades and use water and ice magic. She was also Luke's former fiancée. Luke asked Celine why she had come to his village. However, Celine was more surprised by how much Luke had grown since they had last seen each other 2 years ago. Luke was surprised when Celine revealed that she had run away from home. He could not believe that Celine had cut ties with her family after learning that she was being forced to marry Raoul. Hearing how determined Celine was to avoid the marriage, even saying that she would rather die than marry Raoul, Luke became nervous. He had never known that Celine was so strongly against the arrangement. Celine was surprised when Luke apologized for arranging the marriage between their families. She quickly clarified that she did not want to marry Raoul, but she would be fine with marrying Luke. When Celine tried to confess her feelings, Melia immediately interrupted her and told her to stop with the private conversation. Seeing Celine's confused expression, Melia introduced herself as the first villager, which made no sense to Celine. Melia then explained that they were in Luke's village and that she was his first villager. Celine was worried after learning that Luke had been sent to a barren land to develop it. However, she was surprised when she saw their mud wall, watchtower, well, and crops. Seeing Celine's confused expression, Luke told her it would be faster to simply show her how they had built everything. When Luke built a storehouse, Celine was completely shocked as the building appeared out of thin air. Luke explained that his gift allowed him to build various facilities. Although there were some limitations, Luke could still build most of the things they needed. Celine was even more amazed by how powerful Luke's gift was. Luke then noticed a notification asking whether Celine should be added as a villager. He thought it might not be a good idea to let Celine stay in such a barren place. Luke wondered if Celine would be safe because he knew the House of Albert would not simply ignore the broken engagement. However, Luke knew that the House of Brada would cause even more trouble because they lacked military strength. By marrying their children into the Albert family, the House of Brada could avoid becoming an enemy of the House of Albert. Celine reassured Luke that the Alberts would not waste their time being angry with the Bradas. She was confident that if the Bradas made any more enemies, they would eventually be completely surrounded. Celine also knew that her family would be fine because her younger brother had recently received a powerful gift. After considering everything, Celine decided to live in Luke's village. Luke was surprised by her decision. He was even more surprised when Celine became a villager despite him never pressing the confirmation button. However, his frustration quickly faded when he noticed that his daily points had increased to 12. Luke then pointed out that with her powerful gifts, Celine could surely find a much better place to live than his village. When Celine asked if her presence would cause problems for them, Luke could not give her a clear answer because he had another concern about having her there. A dark aura seemed to surround Melia as she and Celine glared at each other. Luke became curious about why the two were already glaring at each other, even though they had only just met. Melia pointed out that they did not have proper showers or comfortable beds, saying that it would be difficult for someone from a noble family like Celine to live there. Celine refused to back down. She pointed out that they also needed someone strong enough to fight monsters like the goblins. Realizing that Celine had a point, Melia reluctantly accepted her. However, she reminded Celine that as the first villager, she was her senior. Celine thought Melia was simply trying to establish dominance, but Melia explained that this was not the case. She then made a remark about their different appearances, which left Celine offended. Celine tried to argue back, but eventually gave up after losing the argument. As night came and they prepared to sleep, Celine was surprised to see how close Luke and Melia were. Curious about whether they had really been sleeping in such a tiny space, Celine asked about it. Melia glared at her and asked if she had a problem with it. Melia did not want to force Celine to sleep in their hut, so she suggested that Celine sleep outside. As the two women began arguing again, Luke somewhat regretted not building another hut sooner. When Luke suggested that he sleep in the storehouse, both Celine and Melia insisted that the other one should sleep there instead. Finally, when Luke decided to sleep in the storehouse himself, the two stopped him and agreed to share the same hut. The two women eventually fell asleep peacefully, but Luke was so uncomfortable that he could not sleep at all. Back when Celine was 10 years old, she had the opportunity to visit Albert Castle. As her father reminded Celine that she would soon meet her future husband, she did not care at all. While walking around the grounds of the Albert estate, Celine noticed a rock being thrown nearby. She peeked into the bushes and saw Raoul, initially thinking he was Luke. However, she was shocked to see another child tied up and about to be attacked by Raoul. When Raoul prepared to throw a rock at the child's face, Celine immediately rushed over and asked what he was doing. She told Raoul to stop, warning him that hiding the child in such a dangerous place could put his life at risk. However, Raoul refused to listen and threw the rock at the child anyway. Just as the rock was about to hit the child's face, Luke suddenly appeared between them and blocked it with his head. Celine was shocked and immediately rushed to Luke's side when she saw that his head was bleeding. When Raoul saw Luke get hurt, he quickly ran away, telling Luke that he had not been the target. Celine later learned that Raoul was Luke's younger brother. She also remembered how relieved she had felt when she realized that the kind-looking boy was actually Luke. A few years later, Celine and Luke met again. Celine asked Luke if he had ever told their father about Raoul's violent actions. However, Luke did not want to damage his brother's reputation any further. Luke knew that people were already unkind toward Raoul because he was the son of a concubine. Seeing how kind Luke was toward his brother, Celine was glad that she was supposed to marry Luke instead of his violent brother. Back in the present, Luke was excited because he had finally saved up 50 points and could build a small house. Ever since Celine had arrived at the village, Luke had been sleeping between Melia and Celine in their tiny hut. He hoped that building a new house would finally end the uncomfortable sleeping arrangement. After Luke built the house, he and the others looked inside and were amazed to find it fully furnished. Both Celine and Melia were especially curious because it was their first time seeing a modern kitchen. Luke explained the different things they were looking at, and Melia was amazed when she realized how much easier cooking would be. Luke then proudly showed them the bathroom. After explaining how the toilet worked, Luke froze when Celine asked where everything went after they used it. Unable to answer, Luke left both Celine and Melia to come up with their own theories. They assumed that some lower servants must secretly collect everything, imagining that an even greater power was behind the toilet's operation. Celine was excited when she realized that they would no longer have to use the well outside. Luke then revealed another feature of the house. There were 2 bedrooms, meaning they could finally sleep separately. Celine and Melia were both relieved, but they quickly realized that neither of them wanted to share a room with the other. Knowing how poorly the 2 got along, Luke decided that they would continue sleeping in the same room. Luke planned to sleep on the floor while Celine and Melia took turns sleeping on the bed. However, things became uncomfortable when all 3 ended up cramped together on the bed. Melia refused to let Luke sleep on the bed while Celine was willing to sleep on the floor but did not want to sleep beside Melia. With no other choice, the 2 women decided that it would be better to share the same bed. Luke was now completely squeezed between them. Unable to sleep comfortably, he eventually forced his way out of the bed.
Please!
Subscribe.
I need this! My mom is kind of homeless.